All right, so we're talking Brock, we're talking AJ,
Yep.
and you had sent me an article, a Forbes article earlier in the week, and the suggestion from the author was AJ Styles does not receive enough criticism. Am I right?
Basically, that was the gist of the article. This was by Blake Oestreicher of Forbes. And he was saying, Brock Lesnar has been champion almost 490 days as this recording. AJ Styles, between 2 title reigns, has been champion for 400 days. So they've had similar title reigns, although AJ had it in 2 separations. And Lesnar gets crapped on all the time for being a part-time champion. And AJ Styles doesn't get any criticism, probably because he's a full-time champion. But when you think about it, Lesnar, when he shows up, the ratings go up. When he shows up at a pay-per-view, the subscriptions go up. The buys increase.
Yep.
AJ Styles has dream match after dream match, and all these great, we're giving the fans what they want, and this guy's getting pushed, that guy's getting pushed. And almost every match that he's had so far has
fallen short. Except one. And who is that against?
Brock Lesnar.
Brock Lesnar.
So
shockingly enough.
So it goes to show you, one, that Brock Lesnar can still have a good match.
He certainly can, against the right person.
And 2, the build towards that match was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Where they had Heyman going out, and he was actually putting over AJ in some of his promos. At the same time, we have the dream match going into WrestleMania. Nakamura and Styles. And they had 4 matches since then. Mm-hmm. Actually 5 now if you count the SmackDown match. And none of them lived up to the Wrestle Kingdom match. And that's, partially part of the problem is that people were trying to compare Wrestle Kingdom to WrestleMania. Which is deserved and not deserved, because New Japan, we all know, is a different style. We've talked about it earlier in this podcast. AJ, to me, and I've had this criticism with him in TNA and every time I've seen him, he's a decent wrestler in the ring, a great wrestler in the ring. He's not that good of a promo.
No, I don't think he's a very good promo, but I think the reason he's gotten over is because of his ability to have good matches when he's in there with the right person. I think the reason the whole Nakamura thing fell flat and didn't live up to the expectations is because from the get-go, they build it as, this is a dream match. This is going to be one of the best matches ever. If you book something as the best match ever, especially now when you have the internet and you have guys like Okada and Omega who are going to go out there and kill it, I mean, you have to live up to the hype, and this didn't, because it was billed wrong. There was not enough build towards it. They didn't tell the backstory enough. There's so many things that kind of affected that and affected the feud overall. But getting back to the main point here, so are you saying that you agree with the article or you disagree? You think he doesn't get enough criticism?
I think he doesn't get enough criticism. Okay. I believe AJ Styles should be criticized as not being a good WWE champion. What has he done? Well, I mean, the one thing that this article did point out, and this does help, is that he's number 2 in merchandise. He passed Roman Reigns for merchandise sold. So that's a big thing. That is a big thing.
If you're Vince McMahon, that's a big thing. I mean,
that is a big thing.
And you're AJ Styles.
But another thing that's bad that they did point out, which is part of the criticism, is when he's champion, the ratings have not increased on SmackDown. And they've actually had, in April, one of the worst ratings in a year and actually the worst ratings in a year and a half. And he was champion.
Right.
And this was during the aftermath of Nakamura's heel turn. So then the story was actually developed.
And this was post-WrestleMania?
This was post-WrestleMania. Okay. This was the April, I believe it was the April.
So he was feuding with Nakamura.
He was feuding with Nakamura. It was the last week of April. I forget. I think it was the April 30th of SmackDown. That was the date of that show. And it was the worst SmackDown, ratings-wise.
Right.
And yes, I understand there were times where SmackDown was unwatchable just because their roster was completely depleted until the shakeup. But this was before the shakeup. Okay, so this was right before the shakeup, this Raw, or the SmackDown. So Samoa Joe's not there yet. The Miz isn't there yet. So they really had to really rely on AJ Styles to carry SmackDown, and he didn't, ratings-wise.
Well, I mean, it comes down to, I think, multiple things. One, AJ Styles is a very good wrestler. Is he the best on the mic? Probably not, but this is professional wrestling, and they do rely mostly on the booking. WWE, for whatever reason, their booking is not where it should be, and I think everybody has that criticism of them. And when you talk about SmackDown, whether they want to talk about, oh, well, they got this star, these stars, and Raw has these stars, to me, I think most people still view Raw as their number one show. And as long as Raw is positioned as their flagship show, the ratings are never going to be where they would expect them to be, I would think. I mean, that's my opinion. Does he get criticized enough? I think there's been multiple times where he's been in a position to be successful with feuds, and he hasn't. The feuds have not lived up to the hype, certainly. The Nakamura one is probably the biggest one.
But I think to the mass majority of WWE fans, he's been getting a pass. He hasn't, like, people are still, AJ's the better champion. He's there full time. He defends it, all this and whatnot. I get that he defends it more than Brock Lesnar. But the Universal title, granted it's a new title, but every time Brock Lesnar's there, it means something. It shows, like, Brock Lesnar is still a draw whether he's there or not. And I think if you reverse the roles, if AJ Styles was a part-timer and Brock Lesnar was a full-timer, I think their intrigue would both negatively take an effect.
I agree with that, yeah.
So AJ Styles kind of needs to be a full-timer to be somewhat a draw. I think if he does become a part-time wrestler, it would hurt him tremendously. And I think part of the criticism with Brock Lesnar isn't just the fact that he's a part-timer. Because there's definitely been part-timers, and WWE fans have no problem with it. You see it with The Undertaker. You've seen it with Cena now. Even Cena now. The Rock, I think people...
Jericho. Those guys, yeah.
So there's no problem with being a part-timer. The problem is he's a part-timer and a champion. And I think that kind of helps Brock Lesnar in his character because, it shows up when he wants. He wins when he shows up.
Yeah.
And he's still able to, from a business perspective, move ratings. And especially this week. This week they had one of their best Raws of the year. I think it was their best Raw of the year consistently. People did not tune out when Brock Lesnar was there. Mm-hmm. And maybe it is credit to booking. But with AJ Styles, I remember when he was coming in and it was rumored that he was coming to WWE, it was, oh my God, like the greatest wrestler in the world is coming to WWE at that time. Kind of like how Matt Riddle is getting buzz right now with his deal.
It is a big deal that Matt Riddle's coming to WWE.
It is a
and
big
it
deal.
was warranted when AJ Styles did actually show up at the Royal Rumble, I would think. I do think AJ, assuming everything is accurate, like the guy points out in the article, it is fair to say that he gets a pass because he is a full-time champion. Whether people want to agree with the way Brock is booked or not, the WWE knows what they're doing with Brock, at least up until this point. I think we're kind of getting to the point where people are sick of the whole Brock shows up when he wants to. And the thing that made Brock special when he was showing up when he wanted to and working less events, it made him special because when he showed up, big things happened. He beat up a lot of people. You had the whole Suplex City thing going. They use scarcity to their advantage, right?
Right.
And that's basic when you look at things if you look at it from an economical standpoint. If demand if demand increases, you reduce supply, and then that's essentially what they're doing here,
right?
And
granted, this article was from Forbes, so it definitely is business driven,
right? And it also depends on what you define success as, like what because
if he's increasing ratings when he's there compared to when he's not there, if subscriptions increase when he's there compared to when he's not there, and if merchandise moves when he's there compared to when he's not there.
He's their cash cow. Brock Lesnar is more well-known outside of the WWE than AJ Styles is ever going to be.
Right.
That is what it is. People could hate it as much as they want. It's the truth. You're not going to see AJ Styles do a sit-down interview on ESPN in the morning. You're going to see that, and you have seen it with Brock Lesnar.
Right.
And you'll see it when he goes to fight in the UFC.
Right. So I think with people complaining about Brock Lesnar, and this is my big take on this article and just in general, I think Brock Lesnar is criticized too much. I will go on and say that. Brock Lesnar is criticized too much on being the Universal Champion. I get it. He is only defended. He was only in 14 appearances last year. 14. Yep. That's nowhere close to how many AJ Styles was in 2017. And the article still points that out. And we'll post this on our Facebook page so you guys can reference this too. Facebook.com/SCPB podcast, by the way, if you want to look that up. Anyway, AJ Styles has worked so many dates. It easily laps around Brock Lesnar. But one champion that comes to mind of being the greatest champion in professional wrestling, in this era at least, in the modern era, Kazuchika Okada, who just dropped the title to Kenny Omega. Now, Okada held the title for 763 days or something like that. He only defended the title 12 times. Brock Lesnar has defended it. This will be his 11th defense.
Right. Well, Brock Lesnar also wrestles for the WWE, which, like I keep saying, is the biggest wrestling company in the world.
I get that, but
New Japan is.
But we're talking about the criticism. Who criticizes the wrestlers the most?
The internet.
The internet and the mouth-breathing basement dwellers.
Yeah.
Okay?
But they're the fans. They have every right to criticize him.
There's a much bigger fan base than those 2% that, are eating Cheetos on a beanbag naked watching wrestling.
Here's the problem. Brock Lesnar, if he shows up, a few times a year and he can deliver in the ring, I don't think people actually care. As long as he's delivering good quality matches. But when you have a 49-second match against Kane, granted it's Kane, right? It was about 49 seconds.
And it was also a live show.
When you have a match against a guy like Samoa Joe and you're getting your ass kicked and then you give him one F5 and you beat him, and when you go against Roman Reigns and you F5 him 5 times and you just have a terrible main event at WrestleMania, criticism is warranted.
That could also be the part of the fans hijacking that match, though.
That was not a good match.
I'm not saying it was a good match. I'm not saying it's a good match, but I think it was better than what the fans crapped on it on. I think, honestly, the fans have to be responsible for this. They are ruining the WWE product, in my opinion.
Well, we could talk about that.
That's a different argument, but I definitely believe that the WWE fans, at least the mouth-breathing basement dwellers, as I like to call them, they're ruining the product right now.
It could be argued, I think.
It could definitely be argued, and I will talk about them a little bit more in our last segment, which will be coming up in a few minutes here. But just to finish this one off with AJ Styles. AJ Styles' contract comes up in January of this year. Probably will re-sign with WWE for the same reasons I think Daniel Bryan will re-sign. It's, if he wants to go part-time, WWE will obviously accommodate. The money will probably be better, and he's closer to home with his family, as opposed to if he did it in New Japan. He's the same age as Brock Lesnar. They're both 41 years old. If AJ Styles re-signs with WWE, do you see him staying on SmackDown, staying the WWE champion as the top guy there for when they move to Fox?
I would think so. I can't see. Well, I don't really see any. But honestly, with this whole thing that they got going on with Orton trying to bring back his legend killer kind of character, if that kind of culminated to Orton versus AJ, if it's booked right and Orton stays consistent and intriguing, that might be somebody who I could see taking the belt off AJ. Outside of that, there's not many guys I could see. Samoa Joe, I could see that potentially, but there's not too many guys beyond that, at least on SmackDown right now, that I could see legitimately taking the belt off AJ. So I would think so.
At the end of the day, so after this discussion, AJ Styles, should he be criticized as champion at all or not?
I think it's warranted if you look at his past feuds, but if you're comparing him to Brock, I can understand why more people would criticize Brock than they would criticize AJ. Yeah.
Well, I think it's hard because it's apples to oranges. I think because Brock Lesnar is booked differently than AJ Styles is. Obviously, they both worked the contract that they were given.
Yeah.
And I think if Brock Lesnar was given a contract where he would work more dates, I think he would own up to it.
Yep.
You know,
the thing that makes AJ Styles special is his ability to go out there, even if it's not on a more consistent basis, is to put on great matches. Brock Lesnar is a cash cow because of his name. That's why he signed with the WWE. That's why he works a limited schedule, and that's why they pay him big dollars to do that. They're two very different people, but Brock Lesnar is who he is, and his name sells the pay-per-views and the T-shirts, so that is